PodcastCoug Season 7, Episode 12.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football. 30 minutes of Coug talk, where it's personal. Where we took out Jaden and Laura in Tucson on Saturday, and now we're focusing on the 114th meeting between Washington and Washington State in the Apple Cup. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to PodcastCoug. I'm James Laurie, and the Cougs went down Saturday, down on the road, defeated Arizona in Tucson for the third time in 4 tries. Even better news, right? Win down there, clinched another winning record, and at 6th in the past 7 full seasons. Definitely worth noting, and 6 out of the last 7 full seasons winning records. Like I said, looks like we're heading to the LA Bowl. That's the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl in the new SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, and should be fun on the LA Bowl. Is Jimmy going to invite the team on board on his set for TV? That'd be fun, right? The Cougs on the Jimmy Kimmel show in LA, in Burbank. That'd be great. Anyway, Inglewood, California. It is on December 17th at a 12:30 kick. The LA Bowl, it's going to be against either Boise State or Fresno State. The winner of that game, they're going to battle it out on the blue turf in Boise, and so should be exciting. Saturday at Arizona, 4 interceptions. That's right, we had 4 interceptions against Delora, led by as many as 25 points. We were up 25 in the fourth quarter. And 31-20 win seemed like a bigger margin of victory over Arizona, but one of those 4 interceptions, right, was a pick 6, not bad, going against one of the nation's most productive passers. And our defense passed the test, holding Delora in check, keeping the Wildcats out of the end zone until the fourth quarter. A 3-game winning streak, right? Blowing in, and here we are sitting at the conference, 3 in a row wins, 4-4, 7-4 overall, 7th place in the Pac-12, and we seem like we're higher than 7th place, but that's what it is. The Pac-12 probably is the best it's been in decades, with all the teams ahead of us. And you got to remember, though, the Cougs have had the toughest schedule in the Pac-12, right? Playing USC, Utah, Oregon, and Oregon State. And yeah, definitely there were a couple of losses that we should have won, but that's the nature of sports. And look at Nick Saban, right? Alabama Crimson Tide, he's not winning them all. So, hey, how about it's personal, right? Just that it's personal. Didn't help Delora and his Wildcats. Just punished him with all of our blitzes and interceptions, smacking Delora in the face. And you got to remember, speaking about Delora, how about that on that sideline where he missed a receiver. The receiver misread Delora, and Delora goes on the sidelines and almost punches him in the face or hits him in the helmet guard in the face. Hey, that's your friend. That's your teammate, right? That's not how you build teamwork, and that's not sportsmanlike conduct. That is very sad. We're hoping Delora gets better, and Arizona, they're at kind of rock bottom. They're in a total rebuild, but we're so happy that we've got Cam on our team this year, right, instead of Delora. And and going back to that, right, we got to remember that Dickert and his staff did a great job keeping everybody in check, under control, mature, composed, focusing on playing well, not popping off, right, being ready for Arizona. So kudos to the players and the coaches for publicly staying low-key, respectful prior to the game and after the game. So you didn't hear any Cougs spout off and gloat afterwards, which is a credit to everyone in the crimson and gray, right? So 4 interceptions. Defense was lights out. First series, Delora went down. That set the precedence over the whole game. Delora was out of sync, he was just out of sync on the whole game. Great execution by our defense, only giving up 20 points per game, the best since the 03 Holiday Bowl with Jason David and Eric Coleman, right? Nakia Watson just had another great game. he adds the balance to the port of attack, and this is our version of the Coug rate, trying to get that 100 yards on the ground per game. We're not really right there yet, but Nakia is averaging about 80 yards rushing per game. It certainly was fun to watch the Cougs win 3 in a row. We're talking about Stanford, Arizona State, and Arizona getting pummeled by Washington State's defense, right? Speaking about our defense, again, we lead the conference in total defense points allowed at 20, Delora only had 1 touchdown pass, and the most impressive part of the defensive performance Saturday, and there were many, such as not allowing Arizona inside the 20 until the game was decided. And so, and that's how, we just didn't let Delora do any damage with his legs. Delora gave USC and UCLA and others an absolute nightmare in his ability to, with extended plays, and he gained yards, and those plays broke down. So, he did very little against Washington State, against the Cougs, where he just shut him down. USC and UCLA didn't shut Delora down. So good going for our defense. Players, coaches deserve a ton of credit. Instead, though, Cam Ward, how about Cam Ward? He worked with his legs, right? Cam led the team past week in rushing yards, was like 86 and scored a touchdown. Sam Lockett had a great game on Saturday. In addition to 2 picks, he had some solid plays in space, such as tackling Jacob Cowling for a 2-yard loss. And hey, how about Derek Langford, right? A pick 6, obviously, no doubt was the highest of the day, but he made another play that stood out. Arizona faced 2nd and 10 from WSU's 36 with 45 seconds left in the half, and Delora hit Dorian Singer near the sideline, and Langford absolutely hammered Singer after 6 yards, but more importantly, he knocked Singer back, stopping the forward progress in bounds. So forced Arizona to use its final timeout and helped, stall the drive before reaching to the end zone. So, hey, how about our opening drives? We're seeing this week after week. Our opening drives on Saturday was no different. 11 plays, 75 yards, 1 third down. That's it. A 7-point lead, just like that, 7-0. Back to the defense. Great, solid effort. Arizona faced 11 third downs and 3 fourth downs. It converted 3 of those 14 chances. Only 3 out of 14 they converted. You often tell, you could tell a lot about a game's outcome just by a few stats if you're a chart guy, right? Such as 3rd and 4th down conversions and turnover differentials, So Arizona was horrible in both of these areas, in these statistics. So how about Jaden Hicks on the deep pass in the end zone? Right? That was awesome. Cam Ward's keeper for the second score was sweet, as Nakia Watson the effort on Nakia, 3rd and 1 was great. So Donovan Ollie's block on Renard Bell's screen pass during the same drive was epic, and also the Cougs had only 3 penalties in the game. That is awesome. We are really, really keeping down our penalties. So what's not awesome is that we have yet to score more than 10 points in any second half since September. We have not scored more than 10 points in the second half, and on Saturday, that was the only because the defense found the end zone on a pick 6. Now, I know that a portion is due to the leads we had, the big leads that we've established early on, but the difference in play calling and execution between the halves is staggering, and it's indicative of something that doesn't appear to be fixable in the near future. No matter what happens in these last 2 games, we're talking about Washington and the LA Bowl, right? So we've got to figure out the second half, no matter what happens. Now, Eric Morris has to figure this out and make the offense successful in the second half, because we need, because not every opponent is going to be like Stanford, Arizona State, or Arizona, right? And, like I said, we've got Washington. Obviously, we cannot afford to make any mistakes against the Dogs on Saturday. Speaking of Washington, we're talking about the UW, the Huskies, next, right here on the second half of the PodcastCoug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7. From condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Handoff wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs, and it is Apple Cup week, right? The 114th edition of the annual Apple Cup rivalry between number 13 Washington at Washington State, Saturday, 7:30, Martin Stadium, right in Pullman. ESPN. Huskies 2.5 point favorites. The Cougs, with a 3-game winning streak, head back home for our in-state rival against the Dogs. Again, we've won 4 out of the past 5 games. Let's make it another one to remember, another Apple Cup to remember. And for the most part, you should be happy to take a 7-4 record into the Apple Cup despite some issues and shortcomings right on our offense. It's troubling that we don't bolt into these big leads and in the last 3 games and then just take our foot off the pedal right in the second half, which is frustrating. However, we never really are threatened in these past 3 weeks. And what's evident is Cam is not going to be the quarterback that we imagined he would be. His decisions, checks at the line don't give me a ton of confidence against a good D. So that said, I like that, that we are running more, and I'll take what the defense gives us, right? So will Cam, and I think that if they give him 6 to 10 yards up the middle, that's great. If we can get that, he has to bank on that yardage. Keep running the ball, okay? Keep running the ball, Cam. Now consider this: since Penix has great receivers, we had 6 common opponents together between Washington and Washington State. That's the Oregon State, and Arizona schools, right? All, if you take Oregon State, Arizona State, Cal, and Stanford, these all are common opponents. The Dogs are 5-1, and the Cougs are 4-2 with the same identical opponents. If we didn't lose to Oregon State, our records would be identical. Where it gets a little more interesting is the total points scored and the total points allowed. In those 6 games, the Cougs averaged 32 points a game, and the Dogs averaged 36. On the defensive side, the Cougs gave up about on an average of 22 points, and the Dogs gave up 30. Slight edge to the Cougs on that. So it appears to be a fairly close game on computer, as they have one of the best quarterbacks in the conference, no doubt. Penix, they have, excellent receivers. All we can say about the UW is they've got Penix and they've got receivers, and it's shocking what a year ago from today was. Shocking. They had only won 4 games or so of the year. They fired Lake, and the team was it was just absolutely. It was in bad shape, right? And Kalen DeBauer, you got to give him credit. He just got an extension today on his contract. He's brought a lot with his assistants to the team. Their culture is to love the players, don't criticize, love them, build them up, and they're building a foundation. I have to say that they are building something, and we can't take these guys lightly. Now, Obviously, that quarterback transfer, Penix from Indiana, but everybody's doing the transfer, the portal. That's how USC and UCLA tweaks and becomes all of a sudden they're prominent again, just like UW. I mean, UW without the portal would not have the talent. They wouldn't have Penix, no doubt. And we wouldn't have Cam Ward necessarily, but this portal has done a lot. And it's also hurt some teams like Stanford and Arizona, especially Colorado. You've got a lot of guys that have left Colorado. Expect Colorado's head coach to be fired this week, okay? Colorado's got a total rebuild. So does Arizona. Arizona State, Stanford, those are 4 schools that have a complete rebuild, and it's not easy to get accepted in Stanford. You can be a great football player, but academically, I don't think they're going to cut you a lot of slack. So UW has got the 4th best scoring offense in the Pac-12. We've got the number 1 defense in the Pac-12. And if you told me at the beginning of the year that the Cougs would be 7-4 going into the Apple Cup, I would have been thrilled. The Cougs offense, looks great when it's efficient, and Cam's just missing those wide open receivers sometimes, not throwing the ball downfield, not running the keeper. Right? Throwing to the side more often than not, right? And which isn't efficient sometimes. Many times it's not efficient. Penix, by far, is the best pure passer in the league and the best passing quarterback the Huskies have had in the past 40 years. This is the best quarterback that the University of Washington has had in the past 30 to 40 years. He is that good. But we need to put the pressure on him. It's interesting. All the years, Cougs have always been dominating with better quarterbacks. Always. Just year out. Our resume at Washington State blows away Washington in terms of quarterbacks, as far as quarterbacks going to the NFL. Okay, and every Apple Cup, we've got the offense, they've got the defense, and the defense generally wins, right? But little different this year. It's totally flipped. It's flipped. We've never seen it like this. It's been a long time. I think since 2003 and 1993. Palouse Posse was at 93, 97, then 03 Rose Bowl. Anyway, we got to put pressure on Penix, and you'll notice his accuracy will drop big time. However, they have great pass protection, so it won't be easy. Cougs got to get on to a good start scoring early, often, and win this game. The last 3 games were won at halftime, thanks to the defense and the defense. But unfortunately, it didn't work against Oregon because our defense was gassed. I mean, our defense 4th quarter was just gassed. Therefore, we need to score in the second half to win on Saturday. We have to. So, interesting. All right, 2022. Let's go back 40 years. 1982 Apple Cup, 40 years ago. The Huskies were ranked number 5 in the nation. And all they had to do is beat the Cougs and go to the Rose Bowl, right? Washington State stunned the football world by beating number 5 rated Washington, right? Don James never lost to the Cougs until 40 years ago today. But Coach Jim Walden changed that momentum. What did Walden do? Fans stormed the field, and eventually the goalpost came down. And the east goalpost was actually thrown in the Palouse River, quickly replaced by the goalpost with new, double dip, deep foundation goalposts, and they aren't going anywhere. The new ones they replaced. But what did Walden do? One of the best, by the way, that was one of the best Apple Cups of all time. One of them. But Walden gets the credit for bringing the game back to Pullman since 1954. Crazy. You're saying, why? Why was it in Spokane, Joe Albee Stadium, since 1954 to 1981? Why? Well, I think it mainly has to do with the roads. Literally, Spokane had an unfair playing advantage. We did all those years. I get it. I mean, in 1954, driving a car 90 miles on those dirt roads or whatever the roads were in the 50s, I don't know if they were paved or dirt. was problematic. And if your car breaks down, and back then the cars were not very reliable, right? I mean, if you get stuck in the Inland Empire or the Palouse or a wheat fields, it's not like there's 5 gas stations to just run to your rescue with tow trucks right around the corner, right? The roads were they weren't reliable, and also. I mean, it was really a big deal to travel that long, okay, for an hour and a half. I mean, this sounds crazy, but when I was growing up as a kid in the Seattle area, when we went to the Puyallup Fair, which is only a 30-minute trek from Seattle or 40 minutes, that was a big deal. I thought as a kid, I hope our car doesn't break down. We're going on 167 South, right? From Seattle, all the way to Puyallup, and I was sweating it. I hope our car doesn't break. And then going home, gosh, we made it home safely. That wasn't very long ago. I was a little kid. But cars are much more reliable now. Walden brought the AC back to Pullman in 1982. He said, "Enough's enough." But think about this. Think about this. The Huskies had took advantage of playing in Spokane all of those years. That's not a home field advantage, playing against a bunch of alumni to the city of Spokane at a Joe Albee Stadium. Where's some home advantage? So Walden gets all the credit, and thank you, Coach Walden. But if you think about it, if you really think about it, though, we have played a brutal schedule this year, right? I mean, Wisconsin, USC, Utah, Oregon, and Oregon State. From a power rating point of view, we should be in the top 25. However, what is our marquee win, right? I wouldn't say that Wisconsin was. I mean, at the time it was, but I wouldn't say today it is. So we really don't have a marquee win. We lost against Oregon. We lost against Utah. Right? We lost against Oregon State, a very rare loss against the Beavs. Wisconsin, great victory, okay? But Huskies, they didn't play USC. Huskies, the Dogs didn't play Utah, right, at all this year. They just played Colorado last week. They hung 50, 60 points on it, 57, 54 points. Anyway, that's huge, right? Their only marquee win was Oregon, which is a big deal, but they barely beat Oregon State. And a minor point, perhaps, is the difference between UW this season and the Cougs is really playing Colorado and playing Utah. They played Colorado, we played Utah. That's the big difference. And if we played Colorado and not Utah, we'd be 8-3. Let me repeat that. Right? If we played Colorado and not Utah, we would be 8-3 today. And if they played Utah and not Colorado, they probably would also lose and be 8-3. So since we lost to USC and they lost to UCLA, there's no difference there. That's a wash. But they did pull out a big win against Oregon because Nix got injured. Bo Nix got injured. And from this perspective, there just isn't much difference between the two teams, except they've got a very good offense and we've got a very good defense, right? So what do we need to do? We have to try to have more balance, run the ball and force them to stop it, right? When they come up to stop the run, hit the slants behind the linebackers. Don't run the tunnel screens. Cam has trouble throwing it, and our formation tips the play. That's why it keeps getting blown up. We might able to just show up and play and hit the slant, though. I mean, every couple of series we should be throwing a 15-yard or more pass, right? If we throw it to the sidelines, we seldom get that chunk play. But above all, run the ball. Run the ball. Keep it in our hands so we can rest our defense and run it until they stop us. Again, defensively, we've got to generate pressure on Penix. If not, he'll pick us apart. Make him scramble, and his accuracy is going to go way down. totally opposite of most years. Like I said, usually the Huskies have a better defense and the Cougs have a better, more potent offense. This year it's just reversed. Crazy, right? And you know what? It's been 10 years since the Cougs last won an Apple Cup in Pullman. It's 2012. Jeff Toole, right? Quarterback. Cougs are number 1 in defense in the Pac-12. Dogs are the number 4 in scoring offense in the Pac-12. So guess what? We want it to snow. That's right. We want to run the ball and use our defense. Just run the ball. And bring your ski parkas and layer up if you're going to Martin on Saturday. But, we want snow. It's going to be brutal, mid-30s, right? It's dark. It's nighttime, so that's just even more difficult, right? But we want to keep their defense on the field all night long. We got to keep their defense on the field. So we need to run the ball. Nakia and Ward. I'd like to see Schlenbaker in there, okay? Run the ball. Keep Washington's offense off the field because they can score in a hurry very quickly. Dogs throw the ball big time. The snow won't favor Michael Penix and his receivers. Remember Gardner Minshew, right? A few years ago when it was snowing, he had a big disadvantage, right? Minshew never, ever played in the snow before. Now, let's not talk about playing football, right? He never played any time in the snow. He never did never made a snowman, a snowmobile, or one of those where you lay down on the ground and do that, what is it called, that snowflake thing that you just make a big angel thing in the snow. He'd never played in the snow in his entire life, nor had he ever played football in the snow. Huge disadvantage, right? We didn't have a running game. Leach did not have a running game at the time. I mean, we just couldn't. So that was the Huskies' advantage a couple of years ago. Was it 2018 and the AC in Pullman right prior to COVID, right? So, here we are. We need it to snow, and it's going to absolutely affect Penix, and his receivers, right? Because we've got the ground game, we've got the defense. We got to keep their defense on the field as much as possible. So, you know what? So listening to the Apple Cup, it's Apple Cup week, right? It's big hype everywhere on Apple Cup week, listening to the Husky Honks and Dave Softy Mahler. And the Dogs are so confident. They are so cocky. They really are about being ranked number 13 with a 9-2 record and their huge win against Oregon 2 weeks ago. And they think they're superior. They really do. And they do have a good coach, and they've got a great quarterback, and they've got some good receivers. But they are a little cocky right now. And they think they're just something else. And they're pissed that they're not number 12 or in the top 10. They're really, really pissed, And so, anyway, they think that we want them to think they're superior. You know why? Because after pride comes a fall, right? So, anyway, remember, you got to throw out all the records on the Apple Cup, right? You just got to throw all the records out. What you think is going to be, it could be the opposite, right? If a team's 1-11, right, 1-10, or 1-11, I should know, 1-10, or 10-1. It doesn't matter. 9-2. You throw out all the records because it is the true rival game, right? And I like our chances, right? Hey, that's it for episode 12 of our 7th season of the Podcast Coug. Thank you so much for listening. It's the Dogs and the Cougs. Happy Thanksgiving. God bless, and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at podcastcoug.com.
N G T